If you've ever wondered what true despair looks like, join us as we explore the world's most notorious prisons, places where hope seems a distant memory. These institutions are not just cells, they're hellish environments filled with pain, anguish, and the darkest elements of humanity. From cannibals to violent gangs, each day here is a relentless battle for survival. Prepare to witness the chilling realities that blur the line between incarceration and true torment. Buckle up as we take you inside these prisons where the struggle for life is an everyday nightmare. Gitarama Prison, Rwanda Gitarama Prison, stands as a stark reminder of the challenges facing the Rwandan correctional system. Known for housing some of the country's most dangerous criminals, it is emblematic of the larger issues of overcrowding, inadequate resources, and a lack of basic human rights within the prison system. The prison's infrastructure is overwhelmed by the sheer number of inmates it accommodates. Originally built to house a fraction of its current population, Gitarama is plagued by severe overcrowding. Cells that are designed for a limited number of prisoners now hold many more than they should. Inmates often find themselves sleeping on the ground, waiting for their turn to lie down, with little room to move or breathe. The cramped quarters foster a claustrophobic atmosphere, where personal space is virtually non-existent, leading to increased tension among inmates. Conditions within the prison are unsanitary and hazardous to the health of those confined there. Basic hygiene supplies are scarce, and the lack of sanitation leads to the rapid spread of diseases. Without adequate access to clean water or proper facilities, inmates suffer from various health issues, including skin infections and respiratory ailments. The crowded conditions only exacerbate these problems, as illnesses can spread quickly in such a confined environment. The absence of medical care means that many inmates endure their suffering in silence, with no hope of relief. Beyond the physical hardships, the psychological toll on inmates is profound. Gitarama Prison is characterized by a pervasive sense of despair. With limited prospects for rehabilitation or release, many inmates face a bleak future. The guards, often overwhelmed themselves, provide little assistance or support, contributing to the atmosphere of hopelessness. Inmates are left to navigate their harsh realities without guidance or care, fostering a survival of the fittest mentality among them. Moreover, the lack of educational and vocational programs further hinders inmates' chances of reintegration into society. In an environment where hope is scarce, opportunities for personal growth and development are nearly non-existent. As a result, many inmates leave Gitarama with the same criminal tendencies that landed them there in the first place, perpetuating a cycle of crime and incarceration. The situation at Gitarama Prison reflects broader systemic issues within Rwanda's penal system. Overcrowding and inadequate resources are not unique to this facility. They are symptomatic of a country grappling with the aftermath of conflict and the challenges of post-genocide recovery. While efforts have been made to reform the prison system, significant hurdles remain, and Gitarama serves as a poignant example of the need for comprehensive change. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia. Black Dolphin Prison, officially known as Penal Colony No. 6, is one of Russia's most notorious correctional facilities, located near the border with Kazakhstan. This prison has garnered a reputation for its brutal conditions and the extreme measures taken to maintain order and discipline among its inmates. It is a place where the fundamental aspects of human dignity and autonomy are stripped away, leaving prisoners to endure an oppressive and dehumanizing environment. Inmates at Black Dolphin are confined to tiny windowless cells that offer little more than a space to exist. These cells are often cramped, housing multiple prisoners in conditions that can only be described as bleak. The lack of natural light and ventilation contributes to an atmosphere of despair, making the environment even more stifling. Constant surveillance by guards ensures that inmates are always under watch, reinforcing their lack of privacy and freedom. This invasive monitoring is a psychological tactic designed to instill fear and compliance, leaving inmates feeling as though they are never truly alone. One of the most grueling aspects of life in Black Dolphin is the enforced standing regimen. Inmates are required to stand for hours on end, with no opportunity to sit or rest. This practice is a form of punishment and control, meant to break down any semblance of defiance or resistance. The physical toll of standing for extended periods is compounded by the mental strain of the relentless routine. Inmates must navigate this harsh reality without relief, leading to severe fatigue and physical deterioration over time. Discipline within Black Dolphin is enforced with an iron fist. Guards maintain strict control over the inmates, often resorting to violence and intimidation to assert their authority. The oppressive atmosphere is palpable, as the fear of punishment looms over every action. Minor infractions can lead to severe repercussions, including solitary confinement or physical abuse. This culture of brutality creates an environment where trust is non-existent, and inmates are forced to look out for themselves at all costs. Life in Black Dolphin is characterized by a relentless routine that leaves little room for personal freedom or choice. Daily activities are strictly regimented, from meal times to exercise, and deviation from this schedule is not tolerated. Inmates live under a constant threat of punishment, which stifles any hope for autonomy or self-expression. The psychological effects of such an environment can be devastating, leading to feelings of hopelessness and despair. Moreover, the conditions in Black Dolphin are not merely punitive. They serve as a means of control, reflecting broader societal attitudes toward crime and punishment in Russia. The prison is emblematic of a system that prioritizes retribution over rehabilitation, where inmates are often viewed as irredeemable. This perspective perpetuates a cycle of violence and suffering, making it difficult for individuals to reintegrate into society after their release. Kriti Maximum Security Prison, Kenya. Kriti Maximum Security Prison, situated on the outskirts of Nairobi, Kenya, is infamous for its alarming overcrowding and dire living conditions. Originally built to accommodate around 1,200 inmates, the prison routinely houses over 3,000, leading to severe congestion and a lack of basic amenities. This overcrowding not only exacerbates the already harsh environment, but also creates a setting where inmates must constantly compete for limited resources. The conditions within Kriti are nothing short of deplorable. Cells intended for a small number of prisoners are crammed with multiple occupants, leaving little room to move or even lie down comfortably. Inmates often sleep on the floor, sharing space with several others, which heightens the risk of illness and disease transmission. The air is heavy with the stench of uncleanliness, and personal privacy is a luxury few can afford. Such cramped quarters foster an atmosphere of tension and desperation, as inmates struggle to carve out some semblance of personal space in a setting that offers none. Access to food and clean water is severely limited at Kriti. Rations are often inadequate, and what little food is provided is typically of poor quality. Inmates face daily uncertainty about when and what they will eat, leading to malnutrition and other health complications. The scarcity of clean water further compounds these issues, as inmates are forced to rely on contaminated sources. This lack of basic necessities results in frequent outbreaks of diseases such as cholera and dysentery, turning the prison into a breeding ground for health crises. The oppressive atmosphere at Kriti is intensified by the absence of effective oversight and regulation. The prison staff is often overwhelmed by the sheer number of inmates, leading to lapses in security and management. As a result, corruption and abuse can flourish in such an environment, with guards sometimes exploiting their positions for personal gain. Inmates may face additional hardships, such as extortion or violence from both staff and fellow prisoners, further undermining any sense of safety. The struggle for survival in Kriti Maximum Security Prison extends beyond mere physical endurance. Diyarbakir Prison, Turkey. Diyarbakir Prison, located in southeastern Turkey, has gained a notorious reputation for its severe conditions and the treatment of inmates. Historically, the facility has been associated with reports of abuse, neglect, and human rights violations, creating an environment that is both oppressive and dehumanizing. The prison's dark legacy is a reflection of broader issues within the Turkish penal system, where the rights and well-being of prisoners are often overlooked. Overcrowding is one of the primary challenges at Diyarbakir prison. Designed to hold a specific number of inmates, it frequently operates well beyond its capacity, leading to cramped and unsanitary living conditions. Cells meant for a small number of prisoners often contain twice as many occupants, leaving little room to move or rest. This overcrowding not only compromises the physical space available, but also exacerbates tensions among inmates as personal privacy becomes a rare commodity. The lack of proper care within the prison is a critical concern. Medical facilities are either inadequate or entirely absent, leaving inmates with serious health issues without the necessary treatment. Many prisoners report suffering from untreated ailments, ranging from minor injuries to chronic illnesses. The absence of regular medical checkups and the difficulty in accessing healthcare further compound the suffering of those incarcerated. This neglect not only affects physical health but can also lead to a deterioration of mental well-being. The psychological impact of life in Diyarbakir prison is profound. Inmates often face a relentless atmosphere of despair, compounded by the harsh treatment they receive from prison staff. Reports of abuse, including physical violence and psychological torment, contribute to a culture of fear within the facility. The constant threat of punishment leaves many prisoners feeling powerless, unable to advocate for their rights or seek assistance. Over time, this environment can lead to severe mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Furthermore, the treatment of political prisoners in Diyarbakir prison has drawn significant criticism from human rights organizations. Many inmates are detained for their political beliefs or activities, and their treatment reflects broader state repression. Torture and mistreatment of political prisoners have been documented, highlighting the ways in which the prison system can be used as a tool of oppression. Mendoza Prison, Argentina. Mendoza Prison, located in Argentina's Mendoza province, has become a symbol of the country's struggles with its penal system, particularly concerning issues of overcrowding and inadequate living conditions. Originally constructed to accommodate a specific number of inmates, the prison now houses far more individuals than it was designed for, leading to a crisis that affects every aspect of life within its walls. The severe overcrowding at Mendoza prison creates a chaotic and tense environment. Cells that were intended for a limited number of prisoners are often packed with several inmates, forcing them to share cramped quarters with little room to move. This lack of space not only makes daily living uncomfortable, but also contributes to a heightened sense of frustration and desperation among inmates. Personal privacy is virtually non-existent, leading to conflicts and further strain on the mental well-being of those incarcerated. In addition to overcrowding, the living conditions in Mendoza prison are often described as unsanitary and deplorable. Access to basic necessities such as clean water, food, and hygiene products is severely limited. Many prisoners report that the food provided is inadequate in both quantity and quality, often lacking essential nutrients. Coupled with poor sanitation facilities, these conditions create a breeding ground for diseases, putting inmates' health at risk. The absence of proper health care exacerbates these problems, as many inmates suffer from untreated medical conditions due to the lack of adequate medical attention. Reports of ill treatment and abuse by prison staff further highlight the urgent need for reform within the Mendoza prison system. Human rights organizations have raised alarms about the treatment of inmates, documenting instances of physical and psychological abuse. The fear of punishment from guards creates an atmosphere where inmates feel powerless and voiceless. Many prisoners are reluctant to report mistreatment, fearing retribution and further harm. This cycle of violence and oppression underscores the urgent need for oversight and accountability within the prison system. The psychological toll of life in Mendoza prison cannot be understated. The oppressive conditions, coupled with the constant threat of violence, contribute to a pervasive sense of hopelessness. Inmates often struggle with mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, exacerbated by their environment. The lack of recreational activities or programs aimed at rehabilitation further isolates them, making it challenging to envision a life beyond the prison walls. In light of these pressing issues, various advocacy groups have called for comprehensive reform of the Mendoza prison system. Their efforts focus on raising awareness about the dire conditions and the need for humane treatment of inmates. Activists emphasize the importance of addressing overcrowding through alternative sentencing options, improved rehabilitation programs, and better support for reintegration into society. Despite the challenges, there is a glimmer of hope. Discussions around prison reform in Argentina have gained traction in recent years, highlighting the necessity of systemic change. By prioritizing the rights and dignity of prisoners, the country can begin to address the underlying issues that contribute to the crisis at Mendoza prison and other facilities across Argentina. Gldani Prison, Georgia Gldani Prison, located in Georgia, has become synonymous with human rights abuses and systemic failures within the penal system. The facility gained notoriety when shocking footage surfaced, revealing the inhumane treatment of inmates. These revelations not only horrified the public, but also ignited a national outcry, prompting widespread protests demanding accountability and urgent reform. The scandal at Gldani Prison laid bare the harsh realities faced by those incarcerated. Reports indicated that inmates were subjected to brutal treatment, including physical abuse, psychological torture, and neglect. The footage captured disturbing scenes that showed prisoners enduring severe mistreatment at the hands of guards, raising critical questions about the oversight mechanisms within the penal system. The revelations were particularly alarming in a country that had previously promised improvements in human rights standards. In the wake of the scandal, public outrage surged. Citizens took to the streets in protest, demanding justice for the inmates and calling for immediate changes to the prison system. Advocacy groups and human rights organizations rallied together, urging the government to investigate the abuses and implement comprehensive reforms. The protests served as a powerful reminder of the collective responsibility to ensure that all individuals, regardless of their circumstances, are treated with dignity and respect. The events surrounding Gldani Prison also sparked broader discussions about prisoners' rights in Georgia. Activists highlighted the need for systemic changes, including better training for prison staff, improved conditions for inmates, and the establishment of independent oversight bodies to monitor facilities. The public discourse emphasized that accountability must extend to those in positions of authority, ensuring that abuses are addressed and that offenders are held responsible for their actions. Moreover, the scandal brought international attention to the state of human rights in Georgia. Organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch condemned the abuses, urging the Georgian government to take decisive action. This external pressure further amplified calls for reform, as the nation grappled with the implications of its treatment of prisoners on its global standing. As discussions about reform progressed, several key recommendations emerged. Advocates emphasized the importance of enhancing mental health services for inmates, recognizing that many suffer from untreated psychological issues exacerbated by their incarceration. Additionally, improving access to education and vocational training programs was seen as essential for facilitating successful reintegration into society upon release. The Gldani prison scandal ultimately served as a catalyst for change, compelling both the government and society to confront uncomfortable truths about the penal system. In response to the outcry, the Georgian authorities began to take steps toward reform. Initiatives aimed at improving conditions within the prison, implementing oversight measures, and ensuring greater accountability for staff were discussed, though the pace of change remains a topic of scrutiny. ADX Florence, USA ADX Florence, located in Colorado, is often referred to as the most secure federal prison in the United States. It is designed specifically to house the nation's most dangerous criminals, those deemed too risky for other correctional facilities. The prison's primary focus is on containment rather than rehabilitation, a philosophy that profoundly impacts the lives of its inmates. The facility employs a design that prioritizes security above all else, Inmates are confined to their cells for most of the day, often spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. These cells are constructed from reinforced concrete, with solid steel doors that provide little opportunity for human interaction. The stark environment is devoid of windows, limiting exposure to natural light and creating a sense of perpetual confinement. This isolation can have devastating psychological effects, leading many inmates to struggle with anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Life inside ADX Florence is characterized by extreme routines and strict regulations. Inmates are allowed minimal contact with staff and have very limited opportunities for social interaction with fellow prisoners. The prison's policies restrict communal activities, meaning that recreational time, when allowed, is often spent alone in a small exercise yard surrounded by high walls. Such conditions can lead to a profound sense of loneliness and despair, as the absence of human connection takes a toll on mental well-being. The psychological impact of prolonged solitary confinement has been widely studied, and the findings raise serious concerns about the long-term effects on inmates. Many individuals incarcerated in ADX Florence report feelings of isolation that exacerbate pre-existing mental health conditions. The lack of meaningful social interaction can lead to a breakdown in communication skills, making it increasingly difficult for inmates to reintegrate into society upon release. Despite the facility's focus on security, there are growing calls for reform within the prison system. Advocates for prisoners' rights argue that even the most dangerous inmates deserve access to mental health care and opportunities for rehabilitation. They highlight that long-term isolation can produce individuals who are not only unable to function in society, but who also pose a continued risk upon release due to the psychological damage inflicted by their confinement. In recent years, some attention has been paid to the conditions at ADX Florence, with critics calling for increased transparency and accountability. There have been discussions around implementing programs that promote mental health support and rehabilitative services, even within the confines of such a high-security setting. While the challenges of operating a prison designed for the most dangerous offenders are significant, the need for humane treatment and consideration of mental health cannot be overlooked. The question of how to balance security with the rights and well-being of inmates remains complex. As society continues to grapple with issues surrounding incarceration, the case of ADX Florence serves as a critical focal point for discussions about prison reform. The extreme conditions faced by inmates at this facility underscore the need for a broader conversation about the values of justice, rehabilitation, and the humane treatment of all individuals, regardless of their crimes. Cannon Internment Camp, North Korea. Cannon Internment Camp, one of the many infamous detention facilities in North Korea, is notorious for its brutal conditions and inhumane treatment of political prisoners and their families. Established as a means to suppress dissent and instill fear, the camp has become a symbol of the regime's oppressive tactics. Within its walls, inmates face extreme hardships that challenge the very essence of human dignity. The camp houses a diverse population of political prisoners, often including individuals accused of opposing the government, their relatives, and even descendants born into the camp. This policy of punishing not just the accused, but their families, creates a climate of perpetual fear and despair. Inmates are subjected to long hours of forced labor, often working in grueling conditions without adequate breaks. The labor tasks are physically demanding, ranging from agricultural work to construction projects, all under the watchful eye of guards who enforce discipline with extreme severity. Food rations within Canaan are notoriously insufficient. Inmates often receive only meager portions of corn or rice, which are hardly enough to sustain them. As a result, malnutrition is rampant, leading to severe health issues and weakening the prisoners' bodies. Many inmates report a constant gnawing hunger, which drives them to desperate measures, including stealing scraps or trading whatever few belongings they have for food. This dire situation exacerbates the sense of hopelessness that pervades the camp. Punishment for even minor infractions is harsh and swift. Inmates live in constant fear of being subjected to physical beatings, isolation, or worse. The guards employ a brutal regime of discipline, often resorting to torture to maintain control and instill fear among the prisoners. Accounts from former inmates detail horrific experiences of physical abuse, psychological torment, and the relentless threat of violence. The brutality of the camp not only affects the body, but also inflicts deep psychological scars that can last a lifetime. Reports of widespread malnourishment and abuse have drawn international attention to Canaan internment camp, although concrete evidence is difficult to obtain due to the secretive nature of the North Korean regime. Human rights organizations continue to call for accountability and reform, emphasizing the need to shed light on the atrocities occurring within such facilities. However, the regime's tight grip on information makes it challenging to advocate effectively for the rights of those imprisoned. The atmosphere within Canaan is one of despair and hopelessness. Inmates often lose their sense of identity and humanity, reduced to mere numbers in a system designed to dehumanize them. The psychological toll of this environment is immense, with many prisoners suffering from anxiety, depression, and trauma. The long-term effects of such treatment can lead to a cycle of suffering that perpetuates the very oppression the regime seeks to enforce. Anisio Jobim Penitentiary, Brazil. Anisio Jobim Penitentiary, located in the state of Amazonas, Brazil, is notorious for being the site of one of the deadliest prison massacres in the country's history. This tragic event, which unfolded in 2017, highlighted the extreme levels of violence and gang rivalry that plague the Brazilian prison system. The massacre not only led to significant loss of life, but also drew attention to the systemic issues that continue to affect inmates and the broader criminal justice landscape in Brazil. The violent confrontation at Anisio Jobim was primarily between rival factions of drug gangs, namely the Red Command, Comando Vermelho, and the Family of the North, Familia do Norte. Such gang rivalries are not unique to this facility. They are symptomatic of a larger crisis within Brazilian prisons, where overcrowding and inadequate resources create fertile ground for violence. During the massacre, inmates were subjected to brutal attacks, with reports indicating that many were murdered with makeshift weapons in a chaotic struggle for power and territory within the facility. Overcrowding is a critical issue at Anisio Jobim and many other Brazilian penitentiaries. Designed to hold around 400 inmates, the facility often houses more than double that number, resulting in cramped conditions that exacerbate tensions among inmates. With limited space and resources, prisoners frequently find themselves in confrontational situations, leading to violence as they vie for control and safety. The lack of adequate staff to monitor and manage the inmate population further contributes to the instability within the prison, making it difficult to maintain order. The systemic violence and brutality within Anisio Jobim also reflect the broader failings of Brazil's criminal justice system. Inmates often experience neglect from authorities, including insufficient access to medical care, education, and rehabilitation programs. This lack of support fosters an environment where survival becomes the primary concern, pushing inmates deeper into gang affiliations as a means of protection and identity. The cycle of violence becomes self-perpetuating as new inmates enter the system and are drawn into existing gang rivalries. In the aftermath of the massacre, the Brazilian government faced intense scrutiny over its prison policies and the conditions that allowed such an atrocity to occur. Human rights organizations condemned the state for its failure to address the root causes of violence in prisons, calling for urgent reforms to ensure the safety and dignity of inmates. However, significant change has been slow, hampered by bureaucracy and a lack of political will. The psychological impact of living in such an environment cannot be overstated. Inmates endure not only the physical threat of violence, but also the mental toll of living in constant fear. Many suffer from anxiety, depression, and trauma as a result of their experiences in the violent world of Brazilian prisons. The loss of life during the massacre at Anisio Jobim serves as a grim reminder of the human cost of systemic failure within the criminal justice system. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate your support and engagement with our content. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other amazing videos on the screen. Your feedback and contributions mean the world to us, and they help us continue to create the content you love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We look forward to seeing you next time.